A man stands barefoot on cold stone, ankle deep in blood. The air inside the courtyard is thick with the smell of roasting meat, copper, and burning frankincense. But if you look closer at the text, at the actual timeline of the biblical narrative, you start to see something this assumption completely misses. Under the order of Melchizedek, a king who acts as a priest brings eternal peace. The ink dries on the parchment. The scroll is rolled up. For 1,000 long years, the animals continue to bleed. The Levitical priests continue to wash their hands in the bronze basin. The heavy veil stays securely fastened. Israel waits for this shadow king to finally step out of the poetry and into the dirt. And then, the moment arrives. But the man who steps forward to claim the ultimate title does not look like a high priest at all. You probably do not drag an animal to a bronze altar when you realize you have failed. You do not smell the sharp copper of spilled blood. And you do not listen for the faint ringing of golden bells in the dark to know if you are still acceptable to your Creator. But if you sit quietly and pay attention to the heavy, anxious beating in your own chest, when you mess up, you might realize something terrifying. You are still living under the exact same system. You are still operating in the shadow of Aaron. Think about how you instinctively approach the divine when you are carrying guilt. When your hands feel dirty and your record feels stained. The Aaronic priesthood is not the blueprint. It is an interruption. Long before Aaron puts on the golden garments, long before a single commandment, you immediately start building an invisible altar in your mind. You try to balance the spiritual scales. You pile up your good deeds like dry wood, and you bring your trembling promises to do better tomorrow. You offer up your forced isolation and your quiet internal shame, hoping that if you bleed just enough emotionally, the smoke will finally cover your deficit. You treat God like a distant, volatile sovereign who demands a daily transaction of your own suffering to keep the fragile relationship intact. This is the human default. We prefer a system of strict transaction because we can measure it. We want a rigid checklist, a set of defined moral taboos, a religious structure that allows us to keep the terrifying, consuming reality of God at a safe, manageable distance. Your instinct to pay for your own mistakes is not a sign of holiness. It is the symptom of an orphaned mind. A priesthood built on human effort will always eventually collapse under the crushing weight of human failure. The mediator you rely on, most your own ability to make things right, your own discipline. Your own moral track record is fundamentally flawed. It is a bridge that simply cannot reach the other side of the canyon, is etched into stone at Sinai, long before the nation of Israel even exists. Another figure walks onto the pages of Scripture. If you are exhausted from constantly trying to maintain your own spiritual equilibrium, if your jaw is tight from wondering if the scales are balanced today, it is because you are trusting an order that was never designed to heal you. The Aaronic system, with all its precise rules, its heavy garments, and its constant bloodshed, was only ever a shadow. It was a temporary silhouette cast against the desert sand, designed to show humanity exactly how massive the gap truly was. The shadow cannot hold your weight. The substance is a high priest who does not ask for your trembling sacrifices to cross the divide. But to see how this cosmic shift actually takes place, how the phantom king from the dusty valley finally replaces the gold and the bells of the temple, you have to look at a letter written to a group of people who were absolutely terrified to let the old system go. A man sits in a cramped, shadowy room in the 1st century. The air is stale. Dust dances in a single shaft of light. He unrolls a heavy parchment. He grips a reed pen. He is writing a letter. We call it the Book of Hebrews. He does not belong to the tribe of Levi, because Levi has not been born. He does not operate in a tabernacle made of animal skins. He is writing to people who are exhausted. They are facing severe persecution. They are losing their homes. They want to go back. They miss the massive temple stones. They miss the visible smoke. They miss the ringing of the golden bells. They want the safety of the old system. He stops them. He pulls a thread from a dusty valley in Genesis. He pulls a thread from a royal song in Psalms. He ties them both to a crucified carpenter from Nazareth. He points out a glaring problem. Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. Judah holds the scepter. Judah swings the sword. Judah does not burn incense. Under the rigid law of Sinai, Jesus has no claim to the altar. The law absolutely forbids it. A king approaching the sanctuary invites immediate death. But the writer drops a theological bomb. The divine oath in Psalm 110 shatters the law of Moses. God swore an oath. The priesthood is transferred. The old system is obsolete. A new priest steps out of the shadows. He possesses no Levitical genealogy. He holds an indestructible life. He does not drag a frightened goat. He brings his own torn veins. He does not walk behind a heavy woven curtain. He steps into the unapproachable light of heaven. He does not stand daily, repeating useless rituals. The Levitical priests never sat. There were no chairs in the ancient tabernacle. The work was never done. He does not require the blood of a goat to approach the Creator. One order requires death to cover a daily deficit, but this priest finishes the work. He sits down. The cross is not a tragic Roman execution. It is a cosmic priestly inauguration. The bread and wine from Genesis suddenly return. The phantom king's meal becomes a brutal reality. The bread is his torn flesh. The wine is his spilled blood. He serves the meal to exhausted men in a locked upper room. The shadow dissolves. The substance is finally here. The heavy temple veil is permanently torn from top to bottom. The order of Melchizedek is fully realized. But what does this massive, tectonic shift actually mean for the trembling hands of the person reading the parchment? What happens to you when the physical altar is permanently removed? But maybe the part that stays with me most is the absolute absence of a place to rest. For 14 centuries, a Levitical priest could never take a seat inside the sanctuary. There were intricate golden lampstands, a massive bronze basin for washing, and an altar stained with the dark, sticky residue of endless sacrifices. But there was not a single chair. The physical architecture of the old system was carefully designed to communicate a devastating reality about managing human failure. The work was simply never finished. The cold stone floor demanded constant motion, the sharp smoke burning their eyes. The other brings a meal to celebrate a victory already won. One order is tied to human genetics. Passing the heavy, blood-stained garments demanded constant attention. The sheer terror of stepping out of line and falling dead behind the heavy veil kept the adrenaline surging in their veins day after day, generation after generation. And then there is this. The writer of Hebrews tells us that when our ultimate high priest offered one single sacrifice for sins, he went into the true holy place, and he sat down at the right hand of God. He sits down. This is the cosmic sigh of relief that echoes through the entire universe. The cosmos finally has a mediator who does not have to constantly wash his hands in a bronze basin. A priest whose work is so violently, perfectly complete that he can actually rest in the presence of the Creator. If you are in a season where your relationship with God feels like a frantic, exhausting treadmill of performance, this is exactly where you need to stop. You are acting like a Levite trapped in a tabernacle that no longer exists. You wake up every morning and immediately start checking your internal spiritual temperature, holding your breath, wondering if the divine scales have tipped against you because of a failure yesterday. You are carrying the agonizing weight of your own mediation in the tight, from a dying father to his grieving son. The other has no recorded beginning, no recorded genealogy, and no recorded end. Aching muscles of your neck and shoulders, terrified that if you stop trying to balance the books, the Father will finally turn his back on you. When you rely on your own discipline to make yourself acceptable, you are putting on the blood-stained garments of Aaron. Your frantic spiritual pacing is not a sign of deep devotion. It is a tragic misunderstanding of who currently occupies the throne. You do not have a priest who requires you to bring the daily sacrifice of your own emotional torment to prove you are truly sorry. You have a king of righteousness who brings out bread and wine to celebrate the fact that the war is already over. The heavy woven veil is not just open, it is completely destroyed. Your access is not based on your fragile ability to avoid mistakes today, but on the indestructible, eternal life of the one who perfectly represents you. But to fully grasp the sheer magnitude of this ancient promise, you have to stand back and watch the entire thread weave its way through the centuries. A terrified priest steps barefoot behind a heavy woven veil in ancient Jerusalem. He sprinkles warm blood on the golden cover of the ark. He backs out slowly into the dim light, hoping the smoke has covered enough for one more year. And he prepares to do it all again tomorrow. The real question of the entire biblical narrative isn't how well you can keep the rules. It's this: which order of priesthood is speaking your name? But the story was always moving toward a different mountain. A mysterious king walked into a dusty valley and served a meal of peace to an exhausted patriarch. A terrified nation backed away from a smoking mountain and received a blood-soaked system of temporary relief. A Levite washed his hands at a bronze basin every morning and never found a single chair to rest his legs. A Hebrew king sat in a cedar room and penned a divine oath that would eventually dismantle the entire temple. A flawless carpenter from the wrong tribe climbed a Roman cross and tore the heavy woven veil from top to bottom. An ultimate high priest carried his own blood into the unapproachable light and sat down on an eternal throne. And a broken humanity, terrified of the divine presence, finally received a mediator who does not fail. Same oath, same king. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The bells, the golden bells, tied to the hem of Aaron's garment. They were the sound of survival. The frantic acoustic signal that the mediator had not been struck dead in the dark. How much of our modern religion is just us listening for those bells, desperately hoping our fragile efforts are enough to keep us alive in God's presence, in the dark? To feel the weight of what is actually happening in this story, you have to leave the blood-soaked stones of the temple. If you are in a season where you are terrified that your failures have disqualified you, you need to look at the torn veil. Your spiritual exhaustion is not a sign of your unworthiness. It is the echo of a system you were never meant to carry. You do not have to drag your shame to a bronze altar. You do not have to wonder if the mediator is acceptable. The true priesthood is not an inherited title passed down a corrupted family tree. It is an eternal mediation rooted in absolute righteousness. If this shattered a misconception for you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by performance religion. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who swore an oath he will never break open your eyes to the phantom king who has already served the meal and give you the absolute courage to finally sit down. You have to go back to a dusty valley in the book of Genesis, to a brief, mysterious encounter that takes exactly 3 verses to tell. He is wearing fine linen, woven tightly with gold, blue, and purple thread. Around the hem of his garment, small golden bells chime sharply. When we read the ancient Hebrew text of Genesis chapter 14, we are stepping into the aftermath of a massive regional conflict. 4 Mesopotamian warlords have just swept through the Jordan Valley, burning settlements, pillaging cities, and kidnapping Abram's nephew. We are told that Abram takes 318 men, chases down this coalition of military superpowers, and miraculously takes everything back. The text places us in the King's Valley, a dusty depression outside the future city of Jerusalem. The sand is stained, the men are exhausted, and the heavy metal of reclaimed plunder clinks in the desert wind. And then, in verse 18, the narrative abruptly introduces a man who holds no previous space in the biblical record: Melchizedek, the king of Salem. The author of Genesis spends exactly 3 verses on this man, yet those 3 verses establish a theological earthquake. Melchizedek is introduced as the priest of God Most High El Elyon. This is the very first time the word priest appears anywhere in the scriptural record. First mentions in biblical literature are never accidental. They set the architectural baseline for everything that follows. Notice exactly what this original priest does. In the ancient Near Eastern context, kings demanded tribute. When a conquering general returned from a slaughter, Local rulers were expected to either grovel in the dirt or draw their weapons. With every step he takes toward the bronze altar, he is exhausted. The work never stops. Every morning, the fire must be stoked. Melchizedek does neither. He brings out bread and wine. He does not bring a knife, and he does not demand a goat. There is no altar built in the valley, no complex ritual of purification, and no blood spilled to appease an angry deity. Instead, he brings the warm smell of fresh-baked grain and the deep red of fermented grapes. He brings physical sustenance for an exhausted man who has just walked out of a war zone. This is not a system of sin management. It is a declaration of supreme authority and profound peace. He blesses Abram, and then Abram, the patriarch of the promise, the man chosen by God to birth the entire nation of Israel, does something deeply unusual for an ancient patriarch. He hands over a tenth of his spoils. He submits. Abram recognizes that this mysterious figure, operating completely outside of the Hebrew bloodline, holds a spiritual authority higher than his own. And then, as quickly as he arrived, Melchizedek vanishes back into the shadows of the text. He possesses no recorded genealogy. He has no birth date, no father, no mother, and no record of death in the Hebrew scroll. He is an anomaly, a phantom king who serves a perfect meal and leaves behind an unfinished theological puzzle. But humanity rarely tolerates a mystery. Centuries later, Abram's descendants would find themselves terrified. Every evening, the lamps must be trimmed. Every year, on one specific day, he must take a basin of blood behind a heavy woven veil at the base of a trembling mountain, demanding a much louder, much bloodier system to handle the devastating weight of the divine presence. The mountain shakes, the sky tears open. Smoke billows like a massive furnace. 1 million people stand in the dirt, absolutely terrified. Sand stings their eyes. The air smells like ozone and shattered rock. They hear the voice. It sounds like thunder. It vibrates in their jawbones. They cannot bear it. They push back. They tell Moses, "You go. You speak to him. If he speaks to us, we will die." They want a buffer. They need a wall between their frailty and his fire. And so, a wall is built. God gives them exactly what they ask for. He isolates one tribe out of 12. He selects one family line. Aaron and his sons are pulled out from the frightened crowd. The ritual to make them mediators is heavy. Aaron is stripped and washed. Thick, fragrant oil is poured over his head. Bright red blood from a slaughtered ram is smeared on his right ear, his right thumb, and his right big toe. He puts on the fine linen tunic. He fastens the breastpiece. He carries the names of the 12 tribes engraved on heavy onyx stones upon his shoulders. The gold chains dig into his collarbone, terrified that if he has not followed the strict instructions perfectly, he will not walk out alive. The golden bells are tied securely to his hem. He must memorize the movements. Step here, wash there. Sprinkle the blood exactly 7 times. If he fails, the sheer weight of God's unshielded presence will break out against him. The bells on his hem are not just decoration, they are an acoustic signal of life. As long as the bells ring in the dark behind the veil, the people listening outside know the priest is still breathing. The tabernacle is erected. The heavy woven veil is hung. The work begins. A lamb is slaughtered. The blood is caught in a bronze basin. The fat is burned. The next morning, another lamb. The next evening, another. The cycle is brutal. The cycle is loud. Days turn into years. Years turn into centuries. The desert tabernacle eventually becomes a permanent temple in Jerusalem. The wooden tent pegs become massive foundational stones. But the rhythm remains exactly the same. The bronze altar never cools down. The smoke never stops rising. The bells never stop ringing. Every day, the priest walks barefoot on the cold stone. Every day. The animals bleed. The Aaronic priesthood is not the ultimate design for human connection. It is a tragic concession to human fear. It is a system built for a people who backed away from the mountain. They traded the bread and wine of Salem. For 14 centuries, this is what it means to approach God. This is the system. A litany of precise rules. A specific family line chosen from birth for the blood and ash of Sinai. But even as the Levites slaughter the goats century after century, the ancient authors know this is incomplete. They look at the blood drying on the stones, and they know the system is fractured. Because hiding in the Hebrew language used to describe this very system is a profound secret about what a priest was actually meant to be. To understand the limitation of Aaron's blood-soaked garments, we have to look closely at the language the biblical authors used to describe his job. In the English translations of the Old Testament, the word priest appears hundreds of times, almost entirely referring to men cutting the throats of animals on an altar. The Hebrew word used for priest in these passages is the noun Kohen. Its exact etymological root is notoriously difficult for scholars to pin down, but its primary ancient usage carries the physical action of standing up, or standing in the presence of a sovereign to mediate as a proxy. A Kohen is a bridge. He is a designated stand-in, an authorized representative who takes the fractured, desperate state of the people and carries it toward the heavy perfection of the divine. But the title itself is neutral. It simply means a mediator. It does not guarantee the character of the man wearing the robe. This is exactly why the Aaronic priesthood ultimately collapses under its own weight, to stand between the perfection of the divine and the mess of the human dust. When most people think of a priest in the Bible, the men acting as the bridge are just as fractured as the people they are standing in for. But the very first time the word Kohen is used in Scripture, it is attached to a name that subverts the entire system. The name is Melchizedek. In the Hebrew text, it is Melchizedek. Malchi means my king, and Tzedek comes from the ancient root for righteousness, equity, and absolute moral justice. This translation changes everything about how you read the priesthood. When the author of Genesis introduces the first Kohen, he is not just giving us a historical footnote. He is revealing the ultimate standard. The true priesthood is not an inherited title passed down a corrupted family tree. It is an eternal mediation rooted in absolute righteousness. If peeling back the layers of this ancient language is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the ancient prophets watched the temple system fail. They watched the Levitical priests grow corrupt, taking bribes in the shadows, exploiting the poor, and dragging defiled, sickly animals to the bronze altar. They realize the daily slaughter of sheep cannot fix the deeper rot. This is the exact image that comes to mind. Aaron and his descendants, the tribe of Levi, the endless cycle of the altar and the animal inside the human chest. The bridge is broken. The mediator is flawed. But 1,000 years after Melchizedek brought bread and wine to a dusty valley, a king sitting on a throne in Jerusalem picks up a pen and writes a song. And in that song, he makes a startling prediction about a coming king who will resurrect a forgotten order. A king sits in a cedar-paneled room. The air smells of myrrh and burning olive oil. He plucks a gut string on a wooden lyre, the vibration humming faintly against his ribs. The night air outside Jerusalem is cool. He dips a reed pen into dark black ink. He presses it against rough parchment. King David is writing a song. He is the king of Israel, a man from the tribe of Judah. Judah is the tribe of the scepter. Judah is the tribe of the sword. Judah fights. Judah leads. But Judah does not burn incense. According to the rigid laws of Sinai, the tribal bloodline is a locked door. If David walks past the heavy woven veil and touches the bronze altar, the law demands his life. The separation of king and priest is absolute. Another king will try to merge them centuries later, and his flesh will instantly rot with leprosy on the spot. Most people assume this was God's primary design for relating to humanity, a rigid, terrifying legal structure that Jesus eventually had to come and dismantle. But as David sits in the dim light, the Spirit of God pulls the curtain back. The vision moves past the blood-soaked courtyard in Jerusalem. It moves past the smoking, trembling mountain of Sinai. It reaches all the way back to a dusty valley in Genesis, to bread and wine and a phantom king. David hears a conversation in the throne room of heaven. He hears God speaking to David's Lord. He writes down a promise. He writes down an oath. He writes down the exact phrase that will eventually dismantle the entire temple system. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, in the order of Melchizedek. This is Psalm 110. It will become the single most quoted Old Testament passage in the entire New Testament. Notice the weight of the grammar. God does not make a suggestion. God swears a divine oath. He is bypassing Moses. He is bypassing Aaron. He is bypassing the tribe of Levi entirely. God is swearing by his own absolute nature to establish a priest who is not bound by genetics. A priest who will also sit on an eternal throne. This is not a slight adjustment to the ancient religious rules. It is a tectonic shift in the cosmos. Under the law of Aaron, a king who tries to act as a priest brings immediate death.